Going hard in the pit, yeah. I still ball on the pitch, yeah. Something wrong with the picture. Something is wrong with the way, and I don't know why. Why you need to lie. Something is wrong.
All right, how's it going, everyone? Finally got here on the live stream, so thanks for joining me. Let's take a look at some more malware analysis today. Apologies for being delayed today as well. Those of you who have children and experience with trying to put them to bed might appreciate that. Alright, so today I got a few things I thought I'd go through which would be of interest to people maybe. Let me just get my screen set up here. It's a little crazy right now. There we go. Yeah, cool. Okay. OBS is running really slow for me for some reason, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully the stream is good enough quality for everyone, and I won't have to restart it like I did last time. So see how much of a noob I am this time around. So yeah, sick note. Yeah, definitely. It's good to have a fellow parent who appreciates the situation. Good stuff. Let me know how the audio is, the video is, etc. If there's any issues along the way as well. I'm always keen to kind of tweak some stuff and improve as well. So all good. But anyway, today I thought what would be quite interesting to look at are some sandboxes. People quite often ask me as well, like, where do I get my malware samples from to analyze? So maybe talk a little bit around that and show you guys where you can get some samples for free, just to go playing around with some stuff. And then also what I thought, kind of building on that a little bit, would be to test out the sandboxes and kind of profile them as well, so you can kind of see like stuff that bad guys do from a reconnaissance perspective, to see, like, you know, what kind of environment they're in as well. So we'll take a look at that. Hey Zach, how's it going? I'm all good. Thank you for joining in the stream. I do appreciate you guys joining in for Security as well. Hey, how's it going? So along the way, hopefully I've got a couple of samples that I pulled down over the last day or two, but if I'm honest, being a hectic weekend, I've not really had too much time to go through them, but we'll see where it goes. If it's of interest, great. If not, then we'll do some Googling and find some interesting samples to take a look at. So yeah, let's get rolling, I guess. So yeah, like I said, one of the questions a lot of people ask me is, like, where do I get my samples from and stuff. So why don't I go? Let me get a browser window open here, and we can show you the resource where I started off. If you don't know a guy called Lenny Zeltzer, you should definitely check him out. What am I looking for? Lenny Zeltzer. Let's do sandboxes. Yeah, Lenny teaches the SANS course, the SANS Forensic 610. He wrote the course. He obviously teaches it, as well as a number of individuals as well around the globe who support him. But he's a really cool guy. Obviously very knowledgeable within the malware analysis space, and he's got an amazing blog as well. And there's so much stuff on his website that it's a brilliant place to go and have a poke around. So if you look in the technology, or obviously the malware side of things as well, you can see. It's a bit slow here, but plenty of blogs here around the kind of stuff that he likes to talk about. Tips for reverse engineering malware is obviously one of the big ones that people kind of tend to refer to. So you've got a lot of, like, registry common uses and instructions and all the rest of it. So really good, just kind of cheat sheets really to refer to, especially if you're starting out. It's the kind of stuff he refers to and talks to in the SANS courses that he teaches. Anyway, he has a list on his website here, so, like, automated malware analysis. You can see he has quite a lot of, I've never used half of these, if I'm honest with you, but these are sandboxes. So I thought I'd just take a look at a few, throw down some samples, and then just kind of see what they look like, and you guys can see, obviously what the output is as well. So I've got a couple of samples we can throw at the sandboxes to see what they kind of look like, what they kind of come back with and stuff like that. So Android files, we're not going to touch that one, but AnyRun is really cool. I really like this one. So if you've not used AnyRun before, you might see it talked on Twitter quite a bit, to be honest with you. A lot of people tend to talk about samples, and they post the AnyRun link as well. So let's go for it. So this is what it looks like. It's pretty decent. You can see that it's an interesting sample. Emotech.doc. Everything's Emotech nowadays. It's crazy. What I like about this one is you can see, like if you go to public tasks on here, you can see like a list of submissions that people have recently made, and so you can then download them as well. So this is a great resource for pulling interesting samples if you want to if you want to go and have a look at them yourself. So obviously a lot of people will scan files or websites and stuff like that, which the sandbox turns will tell you there's no threats detected, but you can see like this one, whatever this alleged JPEG is apparently malicious. Invoice as well, so like one we can have a look at actually. We can pull this invoice down and see what the deal is. So it's obviously got some macros in it, but it's nice. It's just like quick and easy. And then one of the things that I really like is the fact it gives you kind of interactive screenshots as well. A lot of sandboxes obviously do this, but you can kind of see what's going on the actual VM as the process is executing. So there's loads of screenshots on this one, but you can kind of scroll through them and see what's happening on the actual on the machine. And again, what's really useful in any sandbox, one of the things I really look at, what I'm most interested in, and this is the thing that this kind of user interface gives you nice and clearly, is the process tree. So I want to see like what the sample is executing from a process point of view, what processes it's going to spawn. So when I run it in my environment, I want to see, do I see the same behavior? And you can see there's shed loads of chrome.exe being spawned there. I don't know why, but whatever. I don't know what that sample is. But you can see that it launches PowerShell, and then you can get some more info on this as well. So here's the PowerShell command that this bad boy is running, and it's obviously encoded, but you can probably decode that pretty easily. So that's pretty cool. The other thing I like about it as well, how'd you get out of this thing? Here. The other thing I like as well is the network activity. So as well as the process tree, I really want to see from a network point of view what was the malware doing, and what was it communicating to. And you can see here the PowerShell was hitting various URLs. And the beauty here is what I most like about it, much like why I like Microsoft Network Monitor when I'm using my own virtual machine, is that it will give you the name of the process that is responsible for the network traffic, for the HTTP request, and that's really useful. Some stuff will just give you a PCAP with all of the traffic, but you don't really know what generated the traffic, what process was responsible for it. So if you're interested in working out what stage of the malware is connecting out on the network, then it's super useful. So I guess let's throw our own sample at it and see what happens. I'm wondering what to throw at it actually, now that I've kind of think out loud. You gotta find the window up here. I've got an interesting sample. This is an old one, and I did this in a video a little while ago. Let me show you why it's interesting. We flip over to my virtual machine here. Hey Hipsum Hub, how's it going? I'll try and keep an eye on the chat window as well. For some reason that was minimized. Let me just make sure it's front and center. I really appreciate you guys joining and joining in the conversation. So this sample, I used to really like analyzing malware, which is kind of generically known as banload. They're generally Portuguese banking Trojans. But during my previous endeavors in different employment, these are a popular piece of malware that we used to get targeted with. And so I spent quite a lot of time reverse engineering, more so the downloaders So the first stage, initial infection, which is actually generally more interesting than the actual malware. So how the bad guys were actually delivering this malware to an endpoint. But one of these samples, if I run this real quick, in fact, if I use process monitor, I'm jumping off at tangents here, so apologies, but I will come back to Sandbox stuff. But process monitor is literally one of my favorite tools for malware analysis, as well as quite a few other tools within the sys internal suite. So, get to know them. But process monitor is awesome because you can create some really cool filters. But what I want to do is, when I first thing I do when I run a sample is I just want to have a look for, I can type, where processes start and processes exit. So I'm going to hit OK, and then don't forget to capture the events with Control and E. And then so when you run the actual malware, if you just double click this one, you can see that almost as soon as the process started, it exited. You can see the difference in time is minuscule. And I won't go into it, but if you filtered on banload.exe, for example, you'd see that actually this malware does literally nothing. Holy shit, Duncan Ogilvy is on my stream. Hey dude, I'm about to dive into your tool, so this could get embarrassing, so I do apologize. But awesome, thank you for joining. But this tool, this particular piece of code is looking for a particular environment, and you can use. I'm going all nervous now because Duncan's on my stream, but you can use x64, in this case x32dbg, to quite easily identify what's going on. So the reason why this particular malware sample won't infect me and just kind of starts and stops really quickly, if you dive into the user code here. Something that's quite obvious to me when the first thing you look here is it's got an API call here to get system default lang ID. And immediately after that, there's a comparison in the AX register. And for those who don't know, AX is the lower portion of the EAX register. So E in EAX just stands for extended. So the AX register, which is the first 16 bits, it's going to do a comparison to a hard-coded value here of 416. So if we do a breakpoint on that and hit F9 and we'll let the code run to that point, you can see that the call to get system default lang ID has taken place, and there's now a comparison in the assembly to the lower half of the EAX register, and in this case the lower half is 0409, which obviously does not match 0416. And so if we use graph view, so press G when you're in x32, and quite nicely you can see the logic flow of the code. You can see there's a jump here. So jump if equal to 0, which basically means if it's positive, it's going to come down here. And oops, let me go back. It's going to come in different. It's going to take a different route. What did I do? So you can see jump if equal to 0, we're going to follow the green route, and it's going to come down here and it's going to do loads of bad stuff. And if it's not equal, which basically means they don't match, you're going to come all the way down here to the bottom of the code and pretty much going to exit, right? So you're going to come all the way down this graph, this part of the graph view, and come to the bottom of the code and eventually exit. So what we need to do is actually just patch this piece of code to make it run. So if it's not in the right environment, let me explain this. So get system default lang ID, if we Google it, if I can spell it, default lang ID, can't spell today. You can see here in the Microsoft documentation, it returns a language identifier for the system locale. And if you see the constants and strings here, we'll be able to see what it's actually looking for. So it was 0416, I think, which is Portuguese. So it's looking for a Portuguese environment, and if it doesn't find it, it's going to exit. R1 was, what was it? 0409. Yeah, 0409. Which is, where is it? Here, United States, which is just probably the default for my virtual machine, right? So the malware won't execute, but it will execute if you patch it, and change that value. So we could do that a number of different ways. You can either patch the value that's in the EAX, or you could just actually patch this jump and then force the jump as opposed to rely on the actual condition. So you could do that by editing the code and just change it to an unconditional jump as opposed to a jump if equal to 0. And then if you ran that would, so I'm running it now, it will continue to run and execute, and you'll probably see stuff firing here, no doubt. Which I think it was this thing. So it's quite an interesting sample for me, and we can see we've got exceptions, probably because like the malware knows it's being debugged or whatever, but that's not really the point. So it's probably quite an interesting sample to throw at a sandbox and just see initially if a sandbox can detect or what it detects on it really, because the malware is not going to do much. But I wonder whether anything kind of finds it malicious. So we'll give it this one to begin with and see what happens. So let me see, stream samples. This one here. There we go. We'll run it. See what happens. Hey Jan, what's your question? Do I have a special Windows build or some software package? No, nothing special about my Windows build. It's really old. I use a Windows 7 virtual machine, and it's pretty old in terms of all of the tools and stuff like that I've had on it. It's a 32-bit machine as well. I used to have multiple virtual machines, so Windows 7, I even had Windows XP, Windows 10, Windows 8, whatever, 32 and 64-bit stuff, but unfortunately I just don't have the resources on this particular MacBook to run so many and to keep so many, even just on disk space. I've never really got around to sorting that out and building myself a proper analysis machine. But it tends to suit for everything, this particular one. So you can see here, like this one says there's no suspicious events. That's quite interesting. I would have maybe, obviously this is a very behavioral analysis, right? So it's looking at the malware and running it and seeing from the actual run what you can get off the back of it, as opposed to doing any kind of static analysis as well. So that's interesting. We'll come back to this one. Some of the other ones that's on Lenny's list here, binary guard, true bare metal. I've never heard of this one. Let me see what binary guard is. Nah, looks like something we have to register for or something. Inteaser I've used. I've not used it very much, but I've used it before. So you can see this one doesn't support documents and PowerPoints and stuff like that, but it does support executable file types. Let's give it the same one and see what happens. This one. Yeah, I see mention about Flare VM. I love it. I love Flare. I think it's brilliant. I should use it more if I'm honest with you. So Inteaser finds this malicious. That's good. I never really understand this UI though. Like, what's all this telling me? Strings. Okay. I don't like it as much as I like Anyone, if I'm honest. Probably packed. Yeah, probably. What else we got? Lenny, where are you? Where have you gone? Iris focuses on doc files. Cape. It's another good one, right? I've not used this too much though. If you guys have used Cape a lot. Submit. Maybe this isn't the best sample to play with, but there's a lot of options you can use as well. We'll just go with whatever. Alright, while that's running, what I've also got, out of interest, let me just case I was previously infected. Let me just reset my virtual machine there. What I thought I'd also do is install PA-Fish. PA-Fish is a really cool tool for helping you as a malware analyst understand what your environment is leaking, but also know that bad guys can use similar techniques as well to work out whether they're in a virtualized environment. Sometimes when I try and copy and paste into my VM, it just kind of hangs like this, so I might have to just redo my virtual machine again, but it'll take a few seconds. I feel like it's going to do the same thing, so let me just go back to my image. Like most of my tools, the version of VMware Fusion that I run is pretty outdated, so no doubt that's probably one of the issues. But YOLO. Yeah, Duncan, I'll patch it actually, and see what happens. That's a good point. Let me quickly run PA-Fish for you guys, and you can see if you've never used PA-Fish. Good. Hopefully it's going to copy over properly. It's quite interesting to see the kind of checks that you can make to see whether you're in a virtualized environment. This virtual machine is killing me. Come on. Did it copy? Did. Good. Right. PA-Fish. So here we go. Is debugger present? Okay, so all good. But you can see here, like, it's tracing. It's going to record in a log file all of this stuff for you as well. It's quite good. I like this tool a lot. But you can see here, this is a fairly default install. I've not changed anything particular within this VMware Fusion instance. But this is PA-Fish is going to kind of look for, stuff in the registry or stuff in your process tree, stuff like that, just to see whether it can detect being in a virtualized environment. So it's quite interesting to see. It can do a check on the TSC, which is the timestamp, CPU timestamp counter. All kind of stuff really from the CPU. Sandbox detections here. So what's it found? I'm using a disk which is less than 60 gig because I'm using a MacBook, so I can't afford anything that's more than like 128 gig or whatever. Get tick count is okay. It's interesting. Number of processors is less than 2. Yeah, no shit, because I'm only using 1. Physical memory is less than a gig. Sounds about right. I can't remember why I've set this up, but it's probably right. MAC address as well. This is a famous one. So, in fact, I seem to remember on my SANS exam having a question around about what are the first 3 kind of octets of a MAC address, and 00OC29 is certainly the one that's very familiar to me. What else we got? Looking for QEMU. Everything else looks good, but you can see, like, I mean, here, if you just enumerate the stuff that's in System32 drivers, you can see just stuff that's related to VM tools and VM mouse or whatever. And the key, I guess, is the registry key. VMware tools it's not really stealthy. But yeah, all good. So that's an interesting tool, right, that you can run in your environment. Let's go back to this band load sample and we'll patch this bad boy and then run it. Where is it? All right. Oop. Let me stick that back in my machine here. Let's give it to any run. See what any run does with it. Not this one though. This is an old sample as well, so no doubt, like if it reaches out to a C2 for some other second stage, it will be down or whatever. But we'll see. Well, I like it though. The next, while that's running, the next one I wanted to look at that I like is hybrid analysis. I know a lot of people got probably experience with hybrid as well. This was probably one of my favorites. Let me run it on here as well, the patched version. Oh shit, wrong one. Yes, cancel. That one. Yep, I'm not a robot. Certainly not. Go. All right. Oh, let it do its thing. What did this say? Oh, we got two processes, so it did unpack itself. Probably. Looks like it unpacked, which is good. But no network activity on that one. Do you have to click each one? Yeah, maybe it's got some more anti-analysis stuff in it. I don't know. Hey Jan, yeah, there's definitely a 32-bit version of Windows 7. It's from like the 1990s. But I like to, I mean, I guess back in the day when I was looking at samples day in, day out for my work, I was using like 32-bit and 64-bit VMs and then different versions of Office for certain files and stuff, and just trying to cover every environment and make it as vulnerable as possible. But for whatever reason, I just kind of always used my Win 7 32-bit VM as my default. It's always my kind of go-to. So malicious, 15%. That seems low, but maybe it doesn't do too much. What I thought as well that I would show you on the same kind of subject is a piece of code. You don't really need to use this particular executable, and this is not malicious. This is a oh shit, I've got this shit in my downloads. I'm really like funny about having all stuff in my downloads folder, so I'm gonna just delete it all first so it's nice and clean. And copy this in. But there's a piece of code that Microsoft produced called WMI Code Creator, and because I'm lazy, I don't want to write like for loops all the time and stuff like that on my own. Go and research different languages when I don't write them on a daily basis. If it runs, yeah, here we go. But this kind of knocks together for you some like either VB script or JScript or whatever, based on WMI, so which is obviously gives you a lot of functionality in Windows. So you can kind of choose from any of this stuff. I'm gonna just pick one at random. So like Win32 battery status, for example, and it will just like give you the code. It will generate some code for you, which you can execute on your virtual machine. And it will spit it out. So, well, I don't know, whatever battery status 2 means. But I find it quite useful now and again to write little scripts like this that abuses WMI services to kind of profile virtual machines. So one of the things I like to do is have a look at like, where is it? Like the processes that are listed that are running. So I think it's Win32 process. Let's have a look on here. There's probably so many ways you can do this, but what is it? CS name? Caption. What does caption give you? Yeah, oh, there you go. That'll do, won't it? So you can see like the essentially the name of all of the running processes on my machine, and it's a little. I don't like all of this stuff, so let's execute that instead. So give you a nice list. So here's all like the running processes on my machine at the moment, or at least the captions. It's probably, you can probably call it, just use the caption or the name or whatever. But all of this stuff that's running on my virtual machine at the moment is probably, if you're a piece of malware, you'd want to profile a machine to find out what environment you're in order to learn how to defeat it, I guess. So one of the things you could do, what I was thinking about before, is you could use basic code like this and then fire it to a sandbox and see what the sandbox spits out in terms of all of the running processes, and we could just profile the sandbox a little bit. So I'm checking the chat as well. That's why I'm pausing, because I can't do two things at once. But let me carry on with this, and I'll come back to answer some questions in a few minutes, just while I've got this kind of train of thought going. But what I thought we could do, it's probably, surely it's not caption. You could probably use like .name. Let me just double check it. Yeah, whatever. You could probably like just stick all this. What I was thinking is stick all this in a string of like processes. Just declare an empty string, and then you could do like processes equals processes and object name, and delimit them by like an shit. What did I do? By like an @ symbol or something like that. Not run. Syntax error. Of course. What am I doing? Line 6. One, two, three. Oh, I put some. Did I put that in? Weird. Yeah, so like what I was thinking of is get it into a nice big long string like that, and then you can probably make like a GET request to your attacker's server, and just kind of append it on the path of the GET request. So if you do something like this, so create a XML and HTTP object, form a GET request to your server, change that to processes, spell it right, and send it. Then that you could profile. If you sent this code, obviously with your real server, and if you're running like Nginx or Apache or something, what I was thinking you could do is probably just monitor your Apache access logs or Nginx access logs or whatever, and grab the GET request, because the sandbox will make the GET request. So any run or whatever can make will make that request, and so we can profile it a little bit and see what processes are running. So I'm not going to put my IP address in there that you can see, but I will do it. I will do it to my IP address. And just see if we can get it to talk to my server and see. Let me have a look. We'll do it. Why don't we do it to? What was the one we'll use AnyRun. We'll see what AnyRun has to say about it. So let me upload this. Let me save it. Process.vbs. And let me make sure I'm running. I want to tail my access log, so I won't. Let me see. 1 second. Let me get this on the screen for you so you can see it as well. I need to log in first. Right. Here we go. What am I doing? Alright. This VPS I use is just like my little hack box. I'm not really bothered what happens to it, but it's all the shit that I get. It's just unbelievable. People scanning the net for weird and wonderful things. I don't understand what they expect to find on this, but we'll see. Anyway, so I'm going to tail this log for a bit, and I'm going to upload this file and see what happens. So let me go. Where's my Chrome instance? Here we go. Where did I save it? Wait. Run it. Let's see. See what happens. Right, while it's running, let me have a look at the chat, see what's going down. What are my thoughts on the 760, Stefan? Well, it's an interesting question. I've never taken it, so I don't know. But it looks like a good syllabus. I'm a big fan of Sans training. I think the quality of the training is awesome. But you know, if you don't have the resources or the sponsorship or what have you, there's absolutely stuff you can do online. So. Will I be at 363? No, unfortunately not, Jan. Allah loves anime. Am I useless when they use something like VM Protect or any virtualized opcodes? Yeah, I get baffled by packers all the time. If you really want to kind of get into unpacking, you should definitely check out OA Labs on YouTube. Those guys are absolute bandits. So yeah, they've probably covered stuff like VM Protect and other difficult things. I learn a lot from those guys. So yeah, Brack. Is there any reason why I want to profile the VMs? Yeah, to be honest, I'm just nosy. I think I'm interested in seeing what happens. You know, or what processes virtual machines run to see whether or not they're being stealthy or not. So let's go. Where's my terminal instance here? So you can see here. Here's the IP address of the Sandbox and all of the processes. So let me get that into let's get it into CyberChef, and we can just split it out really easily. We can see what they're running. Come on. CyberChef's another one of my favorite tools as well. It's just so ubiquitous. It's unbelievable. All right, here we go. So this is what the Sandbox is running. What the fuck is that? IME dict update. I don't know. Let's Google it. Should I remove it? No idea what it is. If anyone knows, let me know. What else you got? QEMU, GA. There's an easy one to pick up if you're in a sandbox or not, right? So look for a process with QEMU in it. Interesting as well, though. What was their IP address? Cool. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Wonder about hybrid. Oh, what did they do with the patch sample hybrid? Let me see. Really interested in the process point of view and also the network analysis as well. So let's see if it comes up with anything good there. Yeah, single process. I think I'm going crazy. I can go back in time, but I'm sure any run saw like 2 processes, so like a second process in spawn. Well, you can see there's a DNS request here as well. I don't think I saw anything in any run for DNS activity. That's interesting. Yeah, anyway, cool. Why don't we feed hybrid with? Let's try and profile it a bit. Oh, let me tail my logs again. Yep, cool. So that was the one we know about. Let me see if anything more coming. Yeah, Dan asks you ask a really good question there. Is there any suggestions on how to document analysis for future reference? I really do like MISP. I use it within a work environment. I've also used it just to capture my IOCs and stuff like that when I've done some personal analysis. I think it's a really good tool. I started out using my own templates, just kind of like notes and stuff. But MISP is really good. It's pretty organized. I just find it's a little, it's the word I'm looking for. It feels like a little technical, for a little bit. The UI is not brilliant for me. I don't think it's too friendly. But if you get your head around it, maybe even like soak up the API a little bit and just do a bit of coding around it, then it can be pretty powerful, I think. So how's it getting on this thing? Nope, it just fired. This one. Let me just stick it in CyberChef again. So nothing, no processes there that really stick out at me that's running in a sandbox. Probably more stealthy, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, makes it kind of pointless, but I find it quite fun. And there's tons of stuff. Using this kind of tool. There's tons of different ways using the API calls that are already built into Windows and WMI, etc. To kind of profile machines and stuff. It's just something I like to poke around with, really. So I encourage you to do the same. So cool. In fact, let me just use it to do this sometimes. Right. I had a question on someone DM'd me on Twitter a few days ago as well, and it was in relation to hang on a day, I'm going to cough, so I need a drink real quick. It was in relation to ProcMon and my filters and stuff like that, and I thought actually there's quite an interesting sample I can show to talk around this. But one of the questions was there was a keen eye in on my last stream, and someone noticed that my filter was all geared up around looking for DLLs or DLL search order hijacking situations. So this is my default filter on ProcMon. So every time I could have another snapshot of my virtual machine here, but for whatever reason I decided to snapshot it with this particular filter ready to go. And there was a query around like why I use this, and what the benefit is for malware analysis. And the truth is, I don't use it all the time for malware analysis. I tend to use this for like bug bounty stuff, and this is like the first thing I tend to look at if I'm analyzing an executable that I want to go and find some bugs in. One of the lowest hanging fruits that you can find within a binary is whether or not there is a DLL search order hijacking vulnerability, namely because it might lead to local privilege escalation, which is where you'll probably get paid out some bounty if you find something like that. But what I did do off the back of it, I thought it would be quite interesting to see whether there are examples of malware which take advantage of DLL search order hijacking. And there is one, and in fact a friend of mine who I used to work with sent me a sample a little while ago, which kind of takes advantage of this vulnerability. I thought it'd be interesting to quickly show this as opposed to like spend any great deal of time on it. But for maybe those people who aren't aware of what a DLL search order hijack is, you might come across this kind of stuff in your malware analysis. So let me just download this and I'll tell you what I'm talking about. My VM lets me. Here we go. So there was a particular piece of malware which I don't have the first stage to this. This is just the second stage. But what it was doing, let me just call this something else for now, this DLL. What it was doing, the malware was pulling down a genuine copy of this binary called vmnat.exe. And vmnat is not malicious whatsoever, and it is part of VMware. I guess the clue's in its name. So if I just stick it in PA Studio, and you can see that it's genuine binary and stuff. It's not malicious or anything like that. Although there's probably some indicators, but like 0 on virus total, it's clean. You can see that all of the kind of properties of the file point to it being part of VMware and stuff like that. And what this malware was doing, it would download from its initial payload URL a copy of vmnat and also a copy of it was called shfolder.dll. And this DLL is malicious itself. So obviously, there's antivirus checks which would take place certainly in a corporate environment. And I think this is probably the target of this malware would be an enterprise as opposed to an individual. But you can see here, this has got a lot of indicators, a lot of malicious indicators, kind of firing straight away. But rather than just running the DLL, it would use vmnat to run the DLL. And the reason why the malware was called shfolder is if you run ProcMon with let's go to my filters again. So I'm looking for where stuff is basically the result of whatever is not found, and also whether or not the path that is being looked for ends in a DLL or an exe or whatever. I'm looking for basically any kind of executable file type that isn't found by a program. So if I run this, if I just run vmnat, you can see that vmnat tries to load a bunch of DLLs, but it tries to load them kind of lazily, and it doesn't specify the fully qualified path of shfolder or WinNSI or DNS API or whatever. It relies on Windows to go and find it, and Windows will try and find these DLLs in a certain path. It's called a search order, and so the first hop in that path quite commonly was the current working directory, aka the directory where you've just run your executable from. And so what the bad guys do was they downloaded VMNat, and then they would run VMNat, which would invoke their malware. So it would be a genuine application which is probably whitelisted in a corporate environment, and that would be permitted to run as opposed to the malware.exe running. But VMNat is going to look for shfolder.dll or any one of these ones in the current directory, and if it finds it, it's going to load it into the context of that process. And so, chances are that'll defeat antivirus controls. So it's quite an interesting little trick. So if we run this now, I guess if we run it now, we'll be able to see it. You stop this. It'll kill my machine, but we could probably have a look at VMNat. Look at the modules, and you can see here. I mean, it's highlighted, probably because it's like unsigned and stuff or whatever. And the next thing you know, we've got like all things, got problems. We've got malware infected our machine in the context of a genuine binary. So that's quite interesting. There's a real-world example there of how DLL search order hijacking can be used against an organisation. It's quite interesting. So one to look out for, I guess. Well, I don't see it that common, but let's go back. All right, let me check out the chat. I'm going to close up in a few minutes. Yeah, JR, yeah, definitely upload it. I'm streaming on YouTube, so YouTube just automatically uploads my streams, so you'll see it shortly. And Savage, am I monitoring the file system? I do generally. When I use Process Monitor to monitor the file system. So when I'm running malware, there's certain checks I'll make, certain processes I kind of go through. So I'll just run the sample using Process Monitor, and also Microsoft Network Monitor as well. And I'll just see whether or not there's any behavioral activity that I'm interested in. And if I need to dig deeper, I'll start picking apart the binary and stuff. But generally I just want to let the malware flow, and I want to just kind of let it infect my machine. And I want to just take a first pass really and see what it does. And I usually run samples 3, 4, 5, however many times really, if I'm interested in a particular part of it. So Stefan, it's the same answer as well. So I use Process Monitor to monitor for the process tree history stuff. I've got a good example of that. Let me quickly show you this. Maybe make this my last one. This is a fairly old sample of TrickBot, but it's a good one because it's packed, but also because it spawns a lot of processes. So the way I do it, let me reset my filter. Process create and process exit are generally the two that I start with, and it's going to record all the stuff in the background. We're just going to display that stuff in this, on the screen here. I always forget to run it though, or capture. I end up running the malware and forgetting to run Process Monitor. But if you run this particular TrickBot sample, hopefully it won't make a liar of me. Did I actually click it? Yeah. So we can see here, it does quite a few things, this particular sample. So it's a nice example just to have a look at from a processing point of view. You can see that TrickBot spawned another TrickBot, which exited, and then this one called TSickBot spawned, and then that exited, and then another one fired called TrickBot. Or no, sorry, that exited, whatever. But it can be pretty tricky to understand. If I just pause this a minute, if you press Control and T in Process Monitor, you can get that tree. So you can just quite nicely see that parent-child relationship. And also, what I quite like as well is the lifetime graph so you can see kind of like how long the process lasted for, and whether or not it's currently running or not. But it's good to see the flow. Excuse me. It's good to see that kind of flow, because it's not really obvious in a list view. So this one would definitely be packed, right? And so when I run this and give it a first pass in my behavioral analysis, and I would see this and I think, okay, well, how is it packed, and what do I need to do to go and unpack it? Why is it renaming itself to tSigbot? The image path as well. In fact, the image path is different, so it looks like it's copying itself to a different location. So I forget exactly what it does, but yeah. But it's, real go-to tool. Process Monitor is just amazing, really. It's one of the best tools I've ever used. All right, good. I think, let me check the chat, but I think I'm probably going to wrap it up for tonight. I've got a fair few other samples and stuff that I want to go through, but I want to give them the time on a stream to kind of pick them apart. So we'll cover some Java-based malware, which I found quite interesting, some malicious JavaScript again. We'll take a look at maybe some ransomware. I've also got quite a nice sample which was used in quite an infamous story around the Bangladesh bank heist. So definitely want to Google if you've never heard of that one. But an interesting piece of malware which modifies just a couple of bytes in a particular process in order to steal financial information and make financial payments. That's quite an interesting piece of malware which we'll cover. But just before I wrap up, let me have a look at the chat. See how you guys are doing before we wrap it up. Darren, yeah, Mr. Bisbee, I've noticed you in the chat, dude. Don't you worry. So thank you for joining. I appreciate you coming on the stream. Pixar, I'm not really bothered about my Windows 7 getting updates. I actually want my Windows machine to be as vulnerable as possible. Just because obviously I'm infecting it with stuff and I want it to do as much as possible. So, Michael, do I do much programming? I try to. I tend to write in Python and JavaScript the most, and I'm teaching myself Go because I really want to get down with all the cool kids like Tom Nom Nom, who's an amazing guy to follow in the bug bounty world, and he writes some unbelievable tools, and there's some stuff in Go that I want to write. Which reminds me, one of the streams I want to take a look at is in relation to phishing. And phishing kits and code and backdoors and stuff like that. I think there's some fun stuff we can have there, certainly on a stream. Cool. What else are we saying? Everyone's really grateful. So I'm really grateful for you guys joining me. This is so fun for me. I really do enjoy it. I really enjoy the malware community as well. So it's all good fun. I'm much appreciated. I do like to receive your comments and feedback. So feel free. You can follow me on Twitter if you don't already at CyberCDH. DMs are open, and any comments and suggestions for other streams as well is always well received. So, all right, guys, take it easy. Peace out.